Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us here, and I guess what we might call the dog days of summer. Hope everyone's enjoying a little bit of downtime, hopefully through the summer season, and taking a little vacation, taking some time off. We really appreciate you joining us, and we're going to start off today. We've got, of course, a great lineup of topics, but before we get into that, I just want to get my panelists to share what's sort of, what's on the top of your mind over the last week or so that's sort of a hot topic you think people might be interested in. And I'll start with you, Sara. Go ahead.
Well, just last week, I went to the YMCA General Assembly. It was, usually they get about 3,500 people. I'm not even sure they got 2,000, but it was very small. The expo was very slow, but everybody was really engaged. So that's reassuring. And then a week before that, I went to the IDEA World Conference, which same thing, the connections were fantastic, but the expo was small, the attendance was really small. I think we really need to grow and get back. But again, seeing old friends and really, after you haven't seen it for like 3 years, it was really encouraging.
Okay, good. How about you, Bill?
Yeah, I just find it interesting, some of the things that we're seeing right now out there in modalities. You got Sweat House out there with saunas and cold plunges. You got Perspire Sauna studios. Saunas were amenities where I grew up, came from in the industry. We had them in the locker rooms, and they were nice wood, and they smelled good, and they were hot, and they were great. But they were a side, salad. They were not the main course. And cycling did it to us. We had cycling, but it wasn't the main course. And so the evolution of studios with these models that are packed that we sometimes took for granted in the old school industry, I find fascinating and something to teach me some things.
Yeah, I was in Winnipeg, Canada a few weeks ago, and went to a place called Thermea Spa. Y'all might check that out. It's online, but it's a big spa, has all the typical services, but they have these outdoor pools, cryotherapy, salt saunas, and have built a whole really great business around it. So much so they've got a waiting list, I think, to get on their schedule. It's like 2 months out. It was really impressive. All right, yeah. Blair, what about you? What's on top of your mind?
Well, one thing on that last topic there that Bill had, there's a book by Clayton Christensen called Seeing What's Next. And he describes how industries kind of consolidate and then fracture and then reconsolidate in more intense ways. And it describes literally what's going on in the fitness industry right now. So if anybody's interested, it's really great, Seeing What's Next. But so I saw an article, I think it was on WebMD, about pickleball injuries and the number of pickleball injuries. So here's the number: 67,000 emergency department visits, 366,000 outpatient visits, 8,800 outpatient surgeries, 4,700 hospitalizations, 20,000 post-acute injury episodes, $377 million this year are the costs of it. Here's the kicker: 85% of these injuries come from people that are 60 or older. I think there's probably an opportunity on the fitness side of this, and I think Sara is taking advantage of that. So that's what's been on my mind. Of course, a really good friend of mine just recently broke her wrist playing pickleball. So that was on my mind.
And what I really think is going on is people aren't wearing the correct shoes. I ask all these fitness professionals, please create a small group training course, a personal training course. I emailed 70 of the top trainers to the trainers. Nobody did it. So I created a course. It's pickleball, power and performance. It's all about wearing the correct shoes, making sure you have hip mobility and ankle mobility, and stay the heck away from your knees.
Yeah, thanks, Sara. There's a lot of people that could benefit from that based on what Blair shared. Those statistics, those are pretty alarming, actually. Yeah. Those are big numbers. Well, what's been on top of my mind, which I'm really glad to see, is continues to be a shift in corporate wellness away from, as the Wall Street Journal called it, what did they call it? Foo-foo type wellness, nap pods, free yoga classes, and turning toward really more trying to help people figure out their sort of, if you want to call it, work-life balance, their lifestyle, giving them real resources, like including mental wellness resources to help them through difficult times. giving them time off and really customizing perks, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later in another topic. But it's good to see the companies are really beginning to step up in a real way more than ever, rather than just kind of throwing some things out there to say that they've got a wellness program. So with that, let's jump into our topics, because I know we've got some good ones. I love the first one that Blair's going to talk about. And we've got a great video from Les Mills that they've launched recently. So we'll kick that off and then let Blair tell us a little bit more about it.
There are no shortcuts in this life. No success without sacrifice. I will push past the pain. I will ignore the voice of my father.
Is that all you've got? Come on, no pain, no gain.
I will break free from the shadows of yesterday and run towards the light. Tick tock, tick tock. Time is running out.
Hurry up! I didn't tell you to stop!
The night is my shepherd. And through the ashes, I will rise once more.
No pain, no gain! No pain, no
Hey! What's going on in here?
Nothing? Just working out?
You know, workouts don't have to be so.
Is this heaven?
No. New Zealand. It's where Les Mills comes from.
Oh, guys, nice.
They have heaps of workouts anyone can enjoy. Even you. You bloody weirdo. Is that a smile?
No.
Okay, first of all, this just cracks me up. I think it's brilliant. I think it's incredibly creative. They're targeting Gen Z primarily. Certainly it'll, appeal to people outside of Gen Z. So Gen Z, roughly mid-90s to 2010s, somewhere in there. And they said 64% of Gen Z don't have an exercise habit yet. And they think that there's a lot of ability to get penetration there. And so this, if you ever watch Ted Lasso, and evidently Gen Z has really absorbed Ted Lasso, this character, Brett Goldstein is the actor. He's a very brooding, never happy guy on Ted Lasso. So I feel like they couldn't have picked a better person for their creating what they call happiness ambassadors. He's their first official happiness ambassador. He totally embraced it. He went to New Zealand. He did everything from zip lining to working out at Les Mills gyms down there and taking classes. And he's sort of all in on this new messaging that, and it's sort of the first part of that is so intensely exaggerated about, the intensity of it and everything. It's sort of like they're saying, what have we been doing in our messaging? So their focus, the huge shift is if there's a common theme in almost every one of our talks and takes, it's this shift, right? And we've already talked about it and when we went around the horn earlier. Huge shift in just this big focus on making it happy, making it feel good, and not be such drudgery. Yeah, turn it over to you guys.
My favorite part of that video was two things. I love that she used the word heaps. And second, I want to know how they got my dad to show up for the video.
Well, the satire of how the industry is approached working out, training, and we've talked about it on the show. Not a lot of people want to work out or train, but everybody likes to play and have fun. And so that whole dichotomy and glass and misery and then sunshine and happiness, what it should be. I love the dichotomy. And he's actually a writer on Ted Lasso as well. Wasn't he originally a writer that got into the role? Like he's a brilliant character. He's a very brilliant guy.
Yeah.
I love the theme, choose happy, because I think Yep, we all know that it takes 10 to 12 weeks to really see a physiological change in anybody's body, anybody's physical well-being, and body fat loss, things like that. But you gotta make week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and 5. You gotta make it fun. Or they're not sticking around to week 10 to see, a body change and an attitude change. And I love that video. I love it.
And just another nod to Les Mills, right? Just because they share their research out there, the stuff they find out, they even say, they want to it's not just about them. They want to change how people look at the fitness industry. And so just a nod to Les Mills for all the great work they do. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
hey,
I
Blair,
second
you're always mentioning books. One of our key players at Active Wellness, a guy named Mike Rucker, has got his PhD. He just, I think Simon and Schuster released his book, but he just got back from a book tour. But it's called The Fun Habit, and he talks about how you put fun into your life, and he shifts it a little bit. He compares it to happiness, but it's called The Fun Habit. Dr. Michael Rucker, PhD, and it fits along with this same messaging and the same approach.
Right.
Yeah, good talk, guys. All right, Sarah, Fitfluencers. When I first saw
and
this, I didn't know if you were talking about people in the club or outside the club.
Well, it's both. And even
Okay.
that video was a Fitfluencer, Brent Goldstein, and also people like Jennifer Aniston and stuff like that. And this is very interesting. This is Brittany Dawn, and this was a lawsuit case.
A social media influencer accused of scamming thousands of North Texans through diet and exercise plans won't be headed to trial. The Texas Attorney General's office said it reached a settlement with Brittany Dawn Davis. It's not known the conditions or for what amount of money the influencer settled that case. The state had filed a deceptive trade practices suit asking between $250,000 and $1 million.
I love that. I find it so fascinating. She actually ended up paying $400,000 in penalties, and she wasn't sued because of her poor fitfluencing. She was sued because of unfair and deceptive trade practices, which incidentally I wrote an article on when I was in law school. And what's interesting about that is she was actually charging for shipping, even though this was an email support of nutritional advice. So she got sued for that. So you can't charge for shipping. You could charge for like a convenience fee, but you can't charge for shipping. And the thing is, what she was really sued for is she had 500,000 Instagram followers, 1.3 million people on TikTok, and she was selling nutritional advice that was supposed to be personalized, and it wasn't personalized. But I do want to encourage all of you to use Fitfluencers. So I'm going to show you another video here. And you need to do this for your clubs. This is a great way to reach out to people on social media. There are 50,000 fitness influencers out here, and 2/3, about 66% of the 100 most popular influencers, they lack sound advice. They post messages that can negatively affect people's mental and physical health. And remember, Bill, you had mentioned what a negative effect this is having on teenagers, because they stop feeling good in their own skin and things like that. So what you guys should do is use organic Facebook posts, because Facebook, Instagram, et cetera, 5.2% of businesses are, of their social media posts are only getting seen. It's so small. And so if you ever put buzzwords into your social media posts, like free or discount or no joining fee or limited time offer, it will bottom out your social media posts. So make sure it's engaging, it's original, it's authentic, and make instructors your ambassadors. They're the people that are leading 2-3 classes a week, maybe upward to 8 classes a week. They have a dozen people in their classes or more, and they've got these connections. And here's some advice I can give you guys. I read it in a wonderful New York Times article by Jeffrey Pinkerton. And he said, the best thing to do is ask your instructors to post their own feeds and stories and tag you, the business. Don't have the business focus it or post it and then they tag. Have the instructors focus it, post it themselves. And then also, what you want to do is incentivize your instructors, offer an increased class rate for those who regularly post, and also look at the content of the post. Make sure that they've got quality content, and please make sure these people are certified and they're credentialed. It's very important for that organic, that authenticity, and frankly, for doing what's right.
Yeah, we when I think we were going to talk about this a while back, and I went and I looked up the top 10 Fitfluencers, and I wouldn't use one of them. I wouldn't want one of them representing my business. And sometimes I wonder if we don't find people that are actually members that might have a big following for some other reason, because they have a great restaurant or something like that, and have them, try to break into somewhere else, have them be your influencer in fitness. I think there's a lot of opportunities for that besides the people that are the Fitfluencers. I like the New York Times advice, though. It was great.
Yeah, and the American Psychological Association actually documented one of the worst things to do is show body comparisons before and afters. And my gosh, as a fitness industry, how often have we done that?
Yeah. I think we should just do before and afters that are just faces, right? Before, after.
Yeah. They're so sad. Then
Just do
suddenly
that.
next is
Right? I mean, that might be that's not a bad idea.
I'm never hiring you for marketing, Blair. I'm really sorry, but it's not in your future.
All right, Bill, save us. Take us to what your thoughts are on the adolescents. What's going on there?
I'm not saving anybody. I'm going to challenge us. We struggled internally with what's the takeaway on this topic that I'm about to hit on. And I'm going to read you some stats. I'm talking about teens and adolescents and the crisis. We have a national crisis, and I've cited, I must have read 16 articles about this topic in preparation for today's session. The government says 60 minutes of what they call MVPA, moderate to vigorous physical activity a day. And you look at some of these things that we're going about with suicide, adolescent sex, drugs. Most states have made marijuana legal, which also has a connotation that it's not that big a deal for kids. Whereas, a lot of us when we were younger may have drank as a teenager on weekends, but we didn't do drugs. And there's a whole change in paradigm with what's going on. And I'm going to read you some stats, and I'm going to challenge us as an industry. First of all, first time I heard this phrase, polypill. You know what a polypill is? It's a drug that combines multiple active ingredients that can be used to treat a variety of conditions. Well, physical activity is a polypill. So it's got a lot of activity, a lot of components, and it can treat a lot of different things. But we've got a national emergency going on. 32% of children are overweight. We all know that. 70% of 17 to 24-year-olds do not qualify for the United States military based on health and fitness related issues. 70% of the target market. Girls are 2 times more likely to drop out of sports by the age of 14 than their male counterparts. Children in poverty are 3 times more likely to be inactive. We are by 2030, we will be half as active children-wise as 1965. 71% of girls and 58% of boys don't get that 60 minutes a day. It's a national crisis, and it has all kinds of different, aspects. And now going to the mental aspects, we talk about mental wellness a lot in our show here, and 3 out of 5 teen girls, 10 to 12 years old, have experienced a 70% increase in persistent sadness and hopelessness. It just goes on and on and on. And it scares the hell out of me for a couple reasons. One, I have 3 kids. 2, these are our future customers or non-customers. And, so I really believe that we as an industry have a challenge ahead of us to do more programming and more community around full family activity than just the adult consumer. And I know some models are different than others, but I'm challenging us that are in the family market to really take a hard look at that. And there's different continuums, 2 to 5-year-olds, they need side-by-side play. They need playground equipment and access to play. When you get into 5 to 12-year-olds, you want it to be more games. 13 to 19, then you get into competitive and non-competitive with friends and teams. And, so there's different types of programming for different kinds of things. But we've looked at this thing, and we've looked at other industries as a group. And, the indoor trampoline business has grown up around us. The indoor, entertainment centers for kids has grown up around us. When I was a kid, we had a skating ring and a bowling alley and outside activities. That was it. Now you've got all this entertainment inside 4 walls that have nothing to do with the fitness and health club industry. Again, the whole industry evolved to solve a problem that we are poised to help solve ourselves. And so, what can we do as an industry to really help with this kind of thing? There's parties, activities, outdoor playground design, family events. There's lots of things we can do. But I think that we should take a hard look at it. And, ACE has a great certification, Sara, to your certification mandate. It's called the ACE Youth Fitness Specialist Certification. And so they have a certification to teach people how to use, how to focus on youth fitness. And you got to keep the fun in it. And there's a whole list of activities on how to approach that. But I challenge us as an industry, for the sake of our children, for the sake of our future consumers, for the sake of our society, that we got to play a bigger role, or at least be really cognizant and aware of what we can do to foster community, family, and children's mental wellness and physical health. And so, it just keeps getting worse, and the research. And so I wanted to make it a topic today, because I think it's something that we really got to look at as an industry very hard. And the people that tune into this show are the best in class and operators. So, we as a group should do a lot more for our youth. So I'll throw it out to my colleagues.
There is there seems to be proof of concept out there for a product that serves that. And that's, coming out of the pandemic, I think anybody who's listening.
One of the best things that's happened is
that anybody that had camps and everything got, they were running at 120% of what they were in 19. I got to visit Chelsea Piers in New York a few months ago, and their new indoor field house that they're doing, they are absolutely booked out on all their kids programs and everything. So there's certainly proof of concept that parents are going to spend the money to get kids in those programs if they're made available.
Yeah.
And I do believe that because girls in sports, women in sports are getting more through like Cardell Spangler's work with the women's Olympic soccer, female soccer teams getting the recognition, that there's aspirations out there for younger girls to get active. And I know it's important, especially team sports. You said, Bill, it was like that 12 to 18-year-old, they take it seriously. But if they don't see it on TV, or they don't see it on Instagram or TikTok about sports, when they start looking at their phones at 8 years old, they're not going to take it seriously. So I think this is great.
Yep. Thanks for sharing that, Bill. That's a good message.
Yeah, and then we
Appreciate that.
back in the we're getting some feedback in the chat box, and I think there's a lot of solutions. It's looking at that consumer in a different way, and from active birthday parties to the summer programming to one-off events to introducing gamification to there's a lot of different solutions. We could spend a couple of days probably on a conference just on youth fitness and youth programming. But the key is to look at the needs of different age groups and look at the whole family as a whole, not just carving out silos of individuals. A lot of times we've tried different things and we just hope people come. We found that little kids didn't like the routine of circuits on the little fitness equipment. They like gamification and they like to play and have more disruptive play. So, challenge all of us to come up with solutions that impact the youth.
Thanks, Phil. All right, so the next topic is medical schools get healthier, and that really probably sounds to some of you like a little bit of an oxymoron. But the reality is, for those of us that have been in the industry for a while, we know we've lamented for decades the fact that a lot of physicians, when they go through medical school, get absolutely no training about nutrition or exercise or sort of preventive medicine, like the Wall Street Journal article was talking about. But that's changed recently. And now if you look at the curriculum that's been set up in most of the medical schools, it does include something about nutrition, exercise, taught on a regular basis as we go forward.
Yeah, so I got a new GP, and I went my first visit to him just over a year ago, and I was blown away because he wanted to talk about exercise and nutrition. I was completely impressed. I finally went back, looked at all of his credentials and his background. I thought, well, I'm glad I got this guy, and he knew he was sort of preaching to the choir, but he was asking questions about it, but he says he has these conversations with all of his patients. I was very, very pleased. I was surprised and pleased. Yeah.
There's a great book out there called Outlive, and he calls this sort of lifestyle medicine shift medicine 3.0. So you just may hear that vernacular out there. People are calling it a number of different things, but it's just as you suggest, Blair, going to your primary doctor and them actually giving some credence to the importance of those things.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic book. To me, that's a must read for all of us in the industry. Outlive. It's a great book.
Yeah.
What I found interesting is when I tore my knee up again this spring, and when I went to the physician, I went to the Stedman Clinic, which is really known for their athletic people. Nope, didn't want to do surgery. He said, nope, we're going to give you a little shot of PRP, which is that plasma-rich protein, and you're doing physical therapy. And I was excited. I didn't have to have my meniscus carved up again.
Yeah. So Sara, it's just dawning on me just now, but since we've been doing this show, you've had a really bad collision with a hockey puck. You've messed up your knee doing snow skiing. You've torn something else playing pickleball. I just want to know, what's next?
Fitness is my life. All I'm going to do is go into a little salt room and sit for a while, and maybe I'll do an infrared and then I'll plunge. That's my goal for 2020, the rest of 2023.
I think you should wear a helmet on all your activities.
I do. All right.
Maybe
So
it's because I'm over 60. I don't know. What do you think, Blair?
I know.
Yeah, you're into the statistics. All right, well, we'll move on from this one. I just wanted to make that aware for everybody out there, because again, so many of us have been just unashamedly sort of like, I can't believe they're not spending more time talking about it. So at least there's a shift that's happening. And now, Sara, I'll throw it back to a big lawsuit about gym discrimination, probably some lessons for all of us in this.
Yeah, I was pretty interested in this. I know, don't freak out. I have no video. I'm always the queen of videos on these things. But I was really interested. Equinox, which is one of my favorite gyms, they have fabulous programming. They have a fabulous, infrastructure for how they manage and their systems for human resources, et cetera. But they were sued by Robin Europe, and she was a Black personal trainer. She was hired in 2018. She very quickly was elevated to manage the personal trainer. So she had 15 employees under her. And one of the employees in particular really harassed her. And they said that it was because of her race and her gender. And so she sued, and it was a very interesting lawsuit. I read about it in the fitness industry rag, but first of all, it was sent to me July 21st by Law 360, which is for licensed attorneys. Really interesting. And the ruling actually shows how important a swift, consistent investigation and discipline are when responding to individuals with internal complaints. So she sued for discrimination, 10 counts of discrimination dealing with Title IX. They were not found, Equinox claimed, they were not sufficient to sustain a hostile work environment claim. I mean, she was harassed. And that's what they ended up finding. And they actually ended up awarding her $10 million in punitive damages and $1.25 million compensatory damages and $16,000 in economic damages representing like back pay. But what was interesting about it is, though Europe made her former employer aware of this discrimination and harassing behavior, she did it through internal complaints. They knew about it. Equinox continually and repeatedly failed to investigate or look into Europe's grievances according to the complaint. That's what's difficult. I mean, I had the same situation happen to me at SCW, and I ended up having to fire the person right away. I quickly called my attorney. They said, you have to fire him. You have to listen to the whole complaint from the person. There's certain things you need to do. Number one, first and foremost, internal complaints alleging discrimination and harassment must be taken seriously and handled according to a well-written and well-executed policy, okay? And I do believe Equinox had the policy, but I don't think they, unfortunately, got to the right person. And then second, the employers must continually follow up to ensure policies are being followed and that any discriminatory conduct does not resume, so it doesn't happen again. And then third, the employers must ensure that all managers and supervisors are properly trained regarding how to respond to and report complaints from subordinates. This was really interesting. When I was working for the YMCA, they made me listen to, I had to watch these videos over and over, and you have to do it annually on human resources and anti-discrimination and basically, what do you do about these complaints? So I found this to be really interesting, and I think we all can learn and refresh ourselves on this because we've kind of been out of the loop for 3 years. So re-looking at your policies is a really good idea. Reanalyzing your employee manuals, making sure you have annual education, I think is important.
Yeah, Sarah, I think one of the things you said there, a takeaway for the people listening is most of the clubs probably have it in some verbiage, some language about how to handle the situation appropriately in a policy and procedures manual somewhere buried. But resurrecting that and making sure your employees are trained and aware of what the proper approach is. That's, I think, where a lot of clubs got away from a lot of employee training during the pandemic because everybody was focused on surviving and just making sure they stayed open. And now clubs I work with are coming back, looking at their employee training and really getting back on track with that. So I think that's a good point.
And they need to do this because, I mean, we were at Mania just this weekend and we had this went up and said, can I see your wristband? And the woman looked at her, is this profiling. And I was like, when do you ever hear that? I'm looking for your wristband, babe, but people are sensitive and we've got to be cautious. We've got to be aware.
Well, and you got to be consistent.
Exactly.
And so,
Word, yeah.
if most organizations that get into discrimination issues are lack of training, not the policy, and somebody's inconsistency in how they have approached it. And that's the problem with not inspecting what you expect with regard to your team and your policies and procedures and processes. If you have a discrimination claim, the first thing you want to do is take it extremely seriously. And you want to handle it methodically with an investigation that takes all people's versions of the incident into account and document it. And you treat every complaint with that same rigor. And if you don't do that consistency, you're going to be paying out. And even if you do that consistency, you may find that somebody screwed up and shouldn't have been on your team and shouldn't have acted the way they did toward an employee.
And what's so weird, Bill, is, Equinox would have acted correctly if the staff knew who to inform. They didn't tell the right person. And training them on that policy and that system is just really important.
Very good. All right, Blair, I know you were really looking forward to this topic. You thought it was pretty interesting and something obviously all of us could benefit from hearing.
Yeah, and much harder to do at scale for large organizations, easier for us to do that have small organizations. This is some work from Harvard Business Review, proof that positive work cultures are more productive. They talk about, they use the term cutthroat work culture, cutthroat and highly competitive work cultures. Probably sounds like some of the consultancies out there, but it's also, sometimes people set up their sales organizations that way to be, so there's three main areas of cost on this. First is healthcare, that 80% of doctor visits are due to stress at work from workplace. So 500 billion is siphoned off of the U.S. economy because of workplace stress. So that's the first area. The second is the cost of disengagement, right? So, I think about who do we need to have super engaged? And it's all those people that are facing our customers, especially, right? And sometimes it's easier to get engagement, on your leadership teams and harder to get engagement at the front lines. Some companies try to build in, I know I've mentioned, like Bill says, I always mention books, right? I know I've mentioned the book before, Prime to Perform, and this article really aligns well with that. They talk about the three most positive motivating things are play, purpose, and potential. The Harvard Business Review article talks a little bit about not using that language, but they're saying really the same thing in the Harvard Business Review article. They talk about companies putting in special perks like, gyms, office gyms, whatever, games or whatever. That's not play to people. Play to people is when you're actually doing the work, not separated from my work over there playing. Does my actual work feel like play to me? Is it, do I get to use my own curiosity and my own way to solve problems? And, say you don't just hire them for their hands and feet, you hire them for their heads and hearts. And then they go on to say there's sort of four big things that companies can start to do. Foster social connections. A lot of ways to foster. You guys, I think health clubs could be pretty darn good at this if you're not doing it already. Bosses that show empathy get a tremendous amount more loyalty when bosses show empathy, when they even will go out of their way and even be sort of self-sacrificing to help an employee that really needs it, that it becomes a very sticky environment. Oh, one of the other things that was really interesting in this data, they said that companies that have engaged employees, bosses with empathy, employees they get 100% more job applications than high pressure cultures do. So foster social connection, show empathy, go out of your way to help. Now this last one, I kind of dug in on it. It's encourage people to talk to you. So, and I think it was in Jocko Willink's book, Extreme Ownership. He talks about a CEO who, has an open door policy, really encourages people to talk to her. But nobody did, right? And so sometimes as leaders, we think that by saying we have an open door policy, I'm willing to talk to people, people can be intimidated to do that. I think what's really important on this one now today, what's important today on that last one is that you create the mechanism, that you create the mechanism for people to talk to you. Don't just hope that they're gonna come in and talk to you. Lastly, I'll cover on this and then open it to you guys. Yesterday, I had a chance to interview a guy from a very high-end resort property that's very well known. He also used to be with Ritz-Carlton. And we were talking about coming out of the pandemic where their hotel and golf course and everything had been shut down and what they did with employees. And the employees came back and he said, our 90s net promoter score wasn't happening. We just had to get people in and we didn't take them through the type of rigor training that we did before. And he said, and hence our turnover went through the roof. And so they re-implemented 8 hours of onboarding and training. And he said it completely shifted the engagement of the employees, gave them the freedom on how to, address. They did something really cool. Show them a photograph of 4 people in the lobby and said, how might you anticipate the needs of each of these people? Guy in a business suit with a kind of a look, looking around, somebody with a kid with a teddy bear. And this was part of their training to really kind of teach empathy at the front lines. Okay, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Good. Go ahead, Bill. You look like you got something on your mind.
Well, no, I mean, we kind of used 2 things. We brought back that we were kind of slack on during the COVID timeframe. We brought back our employee engagement surveys. And this year we're doing it differently. We're doing full-time versus part-time, separate questions for the different categories of the positions. And I think, anonymous surveys of your team on engagement, the Gallup 12 is something I've always liked. Is a great idea on this topic, Blair. And then also, you dictate the one-on-ones. You have a one-on-one with every one of your employees. You make those conversations happen. You don't say doors open, come here if you want to. You got to make that happen. Joe Cerulli does a great job with that. The dinners and the lunches and the team events where they take different people out on different things and really gets to know them personally. So it's people. Get to know your people and be in a relationship with them.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, that's a good segue to the next topic too, Blair. I appreciate that. And this is about some of the top perks for employees. In addition to increasing the employee engagement, as Blair was already touching on, these perks were found by, again, the Wall Street Journal published an article on these, some of the things that companies are doing to not only improve the engagement of employees, but also to make them enjoy their work more. And here's 5. A few of these might actually surprise you. The first one surprised me. Stints and sabbaticals. I don't know if most of you, like me, don't know a lot of people that actually take a sabbatical on a real regular basis. After I looked at this topic, I discovered, or I knew this, but it hadn't really hit home with me, but the pastor at our church actually takes a sabbatical for 6 weeks every summer to get away. And if you're familiar at all with sort of the clergy industry, those individuals have a lot of stress because they're dealing a lot of their time with people in great stress. So just as an example, he takes that 6 weeks to get away, refresh his mind, and then come back. And he's been doing it for years. Number 2, pretty self-explanatory, daycare for your parents. We've been doing something like this, I know, in the health and fitness industry for kids, young kids, but we really haven't dipped our toe in the water from any place that I've heard about actually helping people take care of their aging parents. And if, like me, you've been through that with parents when they get to a certain age, it can be a real, challenge for people to balance that care for those aging parents. Number 3, hyper-personalized benefits. And that's sort of a catch-all to say, really look at the circumstances of the individuals that are working for your organization, where they're located geographically, where they are in sort of their lifespan and their life circumstances, where they've got young kids or they've got aging parents or they have health issues, whatever their challenges might be, to sort of customize their perks that you're offering them, not only as far as days off, perhaps extended time to take care of things outside of work, but also just understanding what kind of rewards and recognition they appreciate the most. The fourth one we've talked about a few times, having on-site counselors. There's several health clubs in our industry. They're doing a great job of this. Several that are in my roundtables have launched really on-site counseling, not only for their employees, but also a couple of them for members to help deal with the mental lack of well-being that's just permeating our society today. And then the last one is increasing post-parental leave after childbirth. That one's pretty self-explanatory as well. The point of all those is to really just kind of reinforce, as clubs continue to struggle with finding great employees and then keeping great employees and keeping them motivated, engaged in work. Maybe these are generate some ideas for you that you can use in your club as well, some version of them.
You know, I was talking to somebody else in our industry, and their company, they do a lot of education stuff. Their company, I think it's the last 2 days of the month, everybody gets $25 gift certificates for DoorDash, so that you can have dinner on them. I thought that was kind of a easy, cool, very casual type of a perk.
Mm-hmm.
I actually used to give Starbucks cards to individuals that were doing a great job, and that was really well appreciated. I think I'm going to reinstitute that. One of the things that I always
Okay, I'm going to debate you there, Sarah. I'm going to call you out on that one because I've used this example before. You give me a Starbucks card, I could care less. I don't drink coffee and I don't eat their bagels and everything else, all that fancy foo-foo stuff. So you need to customize what you're giving everybody, not just say, oh, I'm going to give everybody a Starbucks card, because there's a big percentage that don't care about it.
There's not a big percentage, but okay, Brent. And the other thing I was thinking is, when people go on vacation,
Diet Coke card.
when people go on vacation,
Diet Coke.
oh, sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Is there a card you can give somebody that only works to get them Diet Cokes?
Yeah, give it a Brent.
Like if I gave him that card, he would send me a handwritten thank you note if I gave him that card.
Yes, it would. Well, I have a good friend that actually sent me Diet Coke in bottles that had my name on them, Brent Darden Diet Coke. And it's the gentleman right there nodding his head. That was one of the best gifts ever. The only problem is they were so cool, I didn't want to open them. So now they're like, 5 years old, still sitting on the shelf, but you got my name on them. Sorry, Sarah. We digress. Go ahead.
I'll just let you guys talk amongst yourselves. The one thing I thought was, and this is a fault that I have, is if people go on vacation, don't text them, don't email them, try to remember that they don't have to be on staff meetings and webinars and things like that, and really let them unplug. And the same thing goes with everybody on this panel. We need to learn that too.
Yeah. Yep.
Why?
Great. Okay, Bill, bring us home. Tell us all about Lululemon and Mirror. What's going on?
I want to caveat this, something that one of my mentors, Rick Caro, taught me. We're not analysts and we're not into making recommendations about publicly traded companies. So everything I'm going to share with you is publicly available information. And it's just interesting. And I want to get less into the dollars and cents and finance of the concepts, but more about the trends. So Lululemon is now, their acquisition is almost worthless. They paid $500 million for it, and they've basically written it down to zero and talked about discontinuing manufacturing. They've tried to having conversations with some of their competitors, Hydro, about possible sell. And now all that seems to be at a standstill based on, Yahoo Finance and all the public sources. And so, they're looking at 600,000 subscribers. They've dropped their price by 50%, from their high to what they're selling the machine for now. They do a 1-year contract for $39 on the programming element. They don't call it Mirror anymore. They call it Lulu Studio. And now they're pivoting again to more online programming and less about the hardware. And so it's just interesting that that brand, and I want to read a quote from the Walrus newsletter. The camaraderie of a real exercise class is part of the appeal of companies like CrossFit, SoulCycle, and yes, Lululemon. Lululemon's brand is based on the appeal of live getting out there in your athletic leisure wear. And virtual experiences, no matter how impressive, still miss something vital. The sounds and the presence of other people, the feelings of suffering and succeeding together. These are not things that a screen can replace. Now, I'm all about connected fitness and technology, but it's interesting when you go back in time and just look at some of the connected fitness with apparel companies. You had Nike with the apps; they backed off of that. You had Under Armour that took a $130 million loss on what they bought and sold MyFitnessPal for. You've got companies like Peloton that went the other way. They went from equipment to content to apparel. Peloton makes a lot of money on apparel now, versus these other companies went from apparel to equipment to content. And so it's just interesting to see the failures that have occurred, or maybe not failures, but the lack of home runs based on what people thought was the visibility of the future. This is a quote that I found interesting for all of us, because this is really about how do you innovate, how do you look forward, and where you're going to make your bets, right? These companies made bets on a population and an approach. By moving into unfamiliar territory also comes the risk of overextension, especially when the money is flowing. As the lockdowns ended and the world returned to something more akin to normal, the ground shifted once again. Consumers no longer content to live behind screens began seeking real experiences outside their homes. So we had a big bets in this space of apparel, connected fitness, and then people got back to human connection. And I think one of the things for us as an industry to look at just on our innovation approach and our consumers, there's a difference between hard goods, there's a difference between technology solutions, there's a difference between human experiences, and there's a difference between lifestyle appeal. And so where are you marketing and where's your story lie? Because you can't be all of it at the same time. And so, are you a hard goods company that also has a customer experience and is promoting a lifestyle that goes, you got to kind of figure out where your core is. And it's interesting looking at the Lulus and the Under Armours and the Nikes and the Pelotons and just their business approaches. The typical Lulu customer is 18 to 35, and that represents 41% of the world's population. So it's a big group of people to try to appeal to. But anyway, I just find it interesting to see how these big organizations go into something and then pivot based on the consumer adoption. And we've seen it time and time again with apparel and connected fitness in different ways on both equipment to apparel, apparel to equipment. And I just think as operators and innovators, we need to be thinking about the consumer's whole lifestyle and where do we fit in and not overextend ourselves. But I open it up to you guys.
Yeah.
I really think, I was looking at Halo, how Amazon canned Halo, and everything ends like at the end of this month for Amazon customers. And I hear what you're saying about that this is documented change that hopefully is bringing everybody back live. But I also think we need to look at that just businesses need to take risks. They can take 10 new projects and 9 are going to fail. And that one that works is going to knock it out of the park and either save their business or build a new business. So I think as owners, managers, and directors, I don't want to really be discouraged by some of these failures or shifts, but I will also think we need to encourage people taking these risks. Maybe not for the $1 billion, but
let me add one other caveat that Mirror accounts for less than 3% of Lululemon's revenues. And when they released their plans in their analyst call or whatever you call that, their stock didn't take a hit because of the announcements around Mirror. So this may not be a big giant issue for Lululemon. It may be a small bet, but $500 million to me is a pretty big bet. And it's just interesting to see the changes, right or wrong. They're probably better off for it, but it's just interesting to see. I'm talking about it from the consumer's perspective.
Yeah, I've said this before, none of us as club operators have a line item on our P&L for R&D, right? Where the bets we make are generally pretty small unless it's like new locations and things like that, which isn't really innovation, right? That's just kind of duplication. And so we depend on people like Lululemon, like Mirror, like Peloton, like Precor, like ABC. We depend on them to do R&D, and that's okay. What we have to do to innovate is figure out how to take the R&D they're doing, what their roadmaps look like, all those companies, and figure out how to best sort of situate all that. It's sort of like understanding a tech stack for a single gym or a large enterprise. It's sort of like understanding that. How do you put together the pieces of R&D that those other companies are doing that you can benefit from that really match what you're trying to accomplish for your market and your club or clubs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I give a comment, Blair, look at the R&D that all these other entertainment, exertainment activities out in the marketplace have done for kids, and let that R&D play a role in how you do some kids programming.
Yeah, that's good point, Bill. Are you going to summarize our day today for us, Bill?
Yeah, I think we went a little deep on a lot of this today. I think it was a great, I learned a lot. I hope the audience did. We went through the around the room. Sara talked about the industry vibe and growth and talked about her experiences at some of the shows. Blair, you talked about seeing what's next as a book and talked about, pickleball injuries and what's going on in that space. Sara reminded us of shoes and different training around pickleball that is still very much in its infancy. I talked about the studio models with saunas and different modalities that we've kind of taken as amenities in the past that are now making core businesses out of those things. Brent, you talked about the worksite wellness and the increase in what's going on in that space and how important it is. Then we went into the topics. Blair, choose happy, the Les Mills video. Talked about the dichotomy between play and enjoyment, sunshine and dark, dreary misery. Sara, you talked about fitfluencers and how the deceptive practices, not necessarily the advice, but the deceptive practices got that fitfluencer in trouble. And we talked a lot about the lack of sound advice and credibility of some of these people, not necessarily the one you were mentioning, but just in general. We made some comments about would we follow some of these folks, and quite a few of them we said we wouldn't. I did the youth programming thing and challenged us as an industry to pay attention to the crisis with mental and physical aspects of teens and youth. Sara, you took us to discrimination and some of the pitfalls there, even if you're a quality operator doing the right things or trying to do the right things. Have policies, follow up on those policies, train people to respond and report, and make sure you're having those systems in place. Blair, you talked about improving work performance, and we talked about encouraging dialogue and getting people to talk and open up, and how we elicit feedback from individuals to get to know them on a personal level. Blair, was it Blair? Employee perks, or was that Brent? Brent, we got you into employee perks, and no Starbucks for you. Personalize it. What are you doing for employees to encourage them to feel respected and acknowledged and appreciated? And Sara, you brought up some great points on Brent's topic about boundaries. When they're on vacation, give them their space. Don't be blowing them up on the phone and text and email. And so, treat people with respect and dignity they deserve, and create a safe environment where they know they're appreciated. And then I talked a little bit about the challenge with connected fitness and what businesses are we in, and how do we stay to our core but yet innovate, and how do we use other people's learnings in our innovation process.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. We got several comments in the chat. One I wanted to point out and thank her, Julianne, as we were talking about the medical schools and how they've kind of improved. She ended with, you need to be your own primary care doctor. And I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. We have to take responsibility, for our own well-being. I think we can't just offload it to, the physicians, and that hasn't changed, but at least they're making progress.
Yep.
Yep. And well, I thank everybody again for joining us. A good show today. Thanks, my esteemed panelists. We'll be back again in November. I believe it's November the 8th. So get that on your calendar, and we'll wind out this year with our last show of the year then. Until then, have a good rest of the summer, a great fall. And as I keep hearing all from around the industry, everybody seems to be really progressing, increasing revenues, increasing profits, record numbers of members. So let's keep it going out there. Congrats to our industry for their fantastic recovery. Let's just keep it going. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.